You're good.
Do we have a second here?
Do you have the recorder or we're not using it?
I don't know if it
Right.
has it.
Hold on, we're not ready because I was just told to just write this stuff down.
Yep, you're right down as we do.
Yeah,
Oh,
when you said recorder, I was like, wait a minute.
Usually she has a
Can
recorder.
you do it on your
but
phone
we're
if
good.
you
I
want?
can
Or
record.
just so you have it to reference
Yeah.
if you miss something, because it.
For minutes.
Yeah, let me pull it up
Is
here.
that allowed, Mr. Attorney? Of course. Okay.
Usually keep the recorder.
Yeah. That way you can just send, you can send the file
Voice memos.
to her if she
maybe?
needs to.
You got it on over here.
But they also should be able to
This
just
way you
watch
can hear
the,
Correct.
Should I-
the stream back.
let's see.
All day for you
Look at-
guys, huh?
Got eyes on it.
Just when you're ready, push record.
Alright, we're ready. All right, at this time, I'd like to start the Thursday, March 12th Planning Commission meeting. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, can I please get a roll call? No.
Okay,
You just there for a second, and then you need to keep track of who was here.
yeah, okay. Matt,
Here.
Justin,
Here.
Brandon,
Here.
Diane. Here. Andrea,
Here.
Christy.
Here.
Adoption of minutes for this month, for this meeting would be just the February 12th, 2026 meeting minutes. Has everybody had time to look those over? I know it was pretty, for that over, it's pretty simple. Wasn't a lot last month. If so, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes for February 12th.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of February 12th.
I'll second.
I said,
Who got the second?
Diane and I both did.
Okay.
He's right.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Ready?
So we gotta vote again, so you gotta call names.
All right, Matt,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Brandon,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Andrea,
Abstain.
Christy,
Heston.
me, yes.
Me, yes.
And then you split those two things. Just for no,
Okay,
rest for yes. Next on the agenda is agenda considerations. I'd like to make a consideration that for old business, we re-vote on December 11th, of 2025, November 13th of 2025, and January 8th of 2026 meeting minutes due to not having a posting last month.
December 11th, January what?
8th
8th.
and November 13th of 2025.
Okay.
I think we have to vote on that, don't we?
And we're doing it all at once.
Yeah, we'll do them all at once.
I make a motion to approve all,
We gotta make a motion for the agenda consideration first.
oh, for the, okay. I'll make the agenda consideration motion
Okay.
to adopt the
We're
minutes.
just to add it to the agenda.
Okay. And it'll be added under old business.
I'll second it.
Matt,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Brandon,
No.
excuse me, Diane,
Yes.
Andrea.
Yes.
Christy,
Yes.
Alicia, yes.
All right, good. I know this is gonna get confusing, but now we open it up for old business. The only thing on old business is the meeting minutes.
She picked a great day to be gone.
I know, this was all her idea. I didn't go with it.
Old business. Meeting minutes, you said?
Yes, as everybody had time to look over the November 13th, December 11th, and January 8th meeting minutes.
Yes.
I did not get November 13th meeting minutes.
There you go.
I did get the other ones. Do I vote for this since I
You
wasn't?
can
on the-
choose not to.
Okay, good. That's what I want to say.
You can just stay.
Okay. Awesome. I was here for that meeting. Okay.
If you want to stay from all of them, since they only go to January, you weren't here yet. This time I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of all 3 months.
I'll make a motion to accept January 8th, 2026, December 11th, 2025, and November 13th, 2025 minutes.
Is there a second?
I have a second.
Matt,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Brandon,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Christie,
Abstain.
Alicia, abstain.
All right, next on the agenda is new business. We have an address assignment for Lee Farm subdivision.
Yes. So, Lee Farms is subdividing their property through the administrative subdivision process. Their final plat has been, actually I just signed it earlier today. And they need basically they've got their current property that already has an address. But they're splitting off the house from the farm, and they want to give the current address to the house, and then so the remainder of the parcel needs a new address now.
This is the same place on 38, right?
Yes. And so, as you can see in Exhibit B, the math there for how I came up with the new address. The new address that I'm recommending is 7749 West State Road 38. So that'll be the address for the farm parcel, and the house will retain the 7702 West State Road 38 address.
Sorry, I'm trying to get that. I'd looked at this before, but I'm trying to get that address pulled up. Phone feed's slow. So one would be the 7702, and the other one would be the 7749?
Yep.
Okay. This time I'd entertain a motion to approve the addresses of 7702 and 7749 West State Road 38.
I'll make the motion to accept 7702 and 7749 West State Road 38.
Second.
Matt,
Yes.
Brandon,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Alicia, yes.
Next on the agenda is planning commission discussion. We have planning administrator report.
Yes, so as we, under the planning petitions section of the report, we just talked about, or we just assigned the address for the Lee Farms West Farm administrative subdivision. So you see their preliminary plat and their final plat listed as plat 2026-01 and plat 2026-02. And then lastly, there was a application for a plat amendment or replat at 406 East 9th Street to combine two residential lots. It's the house is on the front parcel, and then there's a backyard parcel, and they just want to make it one parcel. So I had that listed here in the report as tentatively approved. I signed that plat earlier today as well as the final plat for Lee Farms.
Do we have to vote? I can't remember, because we've only done it once. We have to vote to approve to combine two plats?
No, well, it depends on the situation. there's some conditions where you would have to, it would be considered a major subdivision instead of a minor, or an administrative, but in this case,
Combined.
no, yeah. BZA case updates. At a pre-filing meeting with a property owner who wanted approval for a duplex use on a property that appears to have been used as a duplex in the recent past. And right now in the ordinance, it appears that duplexes aren't allowed at all. And it's unclear if in this case, this duplex use would be grandfathered in. I'm just not sure when it started, when it stopped. That's kind of the situation there. He was actually supposed to come in earlier today to get some help filling out his application. But maybe I'll hear from him next week. And that kind of goes into the first of the two administrative matters listed here in the report. So allowed uses in various districts. Each zoning district in the UDO has a list of permitted and allowed and special uses. And currently, if the use that you desire is not listed in the ordinance in either a permitted or a special use, then you must seek either a variance of use or a classification of use where we determine that the use you're asking for is significantly similar to one of the listed uses. Because of the costs associated with a variance in particular and the fact that it's not guaranteed, this presents a problem for people who are, especially people who are looking to bring businesses into Lapel and find that maybe the business use that they're seeking is not listed in any of our zoning districts. It poses a barrier because you're telling them you have to pay $500 for this variance and you might not even get the variance. And so it makes them not want to buy the property, it makes them not want to move into town. And so I think that we need to provide more clarity on the uses. There are some uses that we just need to revisit, reconsider. Do we want to allow them, do we not? Just so I know, and that way when people come and approach me asking, what are my chances of getting a variance on this? I can tell them, well, we don't really want that use, or we do want that use. So maybe you're, hopefully we could then even amend the ordinance and list those uses specifically.
Is some of that getting updated right now with what the town council's trying to do?
Potentially. I know Jenny has asked me to put together a list of things in the ordinance that I think or should be revisited and updated. And this is certainly among them. And I know with the new legislation that just passed, which is the next subject of the staff report, that we'll have to have a conversation about our UDO anyway. So
I think also with land uses, we also need to look into structural requirements too for a facade. Just if you look into it, we are really strict. Do we typically always hold people to that? No. But if you're following by the rules,
yeah,
we're ridiculously strict when there's so many different things people can use for facade now that aren't even listed.
Yeah.
Whether
We
that
did
be
work a
business
little bit on that at BZA when we were going out.
Mm-hmm.
We did touch base on that not too long ago.
Really?
We held to what we wanted done.
But it goes into it has to be masonry brick. Well, there's so many different facades. It's not just vinyl or brick. And it becomes a very gray area. And structural design and taste change over the years.
Yeah.
Things come in and out. So when you hold it that strict, then it makes it hard for things like that.
Absolutely, and that's actually one of the not to take us too far off this topic, if people want to still talk more about this, and I have a whole separate memo about this topic, but one of the requirements that the state just passed recently is that we need to have a public hearing to look at our zoning ordinance and determine if there are barriers or impediments to building more housing in Lapel, what those are and what we can do to reduce those barriers. And among the things listed or suggested that we discuss is architectural standards that make it expensive to build new homes. So that's something that we're definitely going to be talking about is those standards. As for the memo, I don't want to read the whole thing, but I listed here that there are essentially 3 problems with the way that uses are currently presented in the UDO. First is that there are a couple of unlisted uses that I've been approached with that we have seen come before the BZA that I believe a couple of months ago, Seth Hartzell was here about one of these uses. So I listed there duplexes as the single residential use that seems to be not in the ordinance. Then some kind of commercial or freight vehicle storage depot kind of use. And then I noticed also that there's nowhere in the ordinance listed contractor offices. So somebody wants to start a new plumbing business or a construction company. Currently our ordinance says they can't do that here. That's seeking a variance. So those are some uses that I've been approached with. I included as an exhibit just all the use tables. So if you didn't have time to do that before this meeting, definitely go through that and think about if there's other uses that you're not seeing in those tables and those lists that maybe you think should be allowed.
That include, because we've talked about this in the past and maybe before you, the clarity for like if a supply store wants to come in and not be industrial because they have to store their pipe outside or their wire outside inside a fence.
So yeah, and that kind of goes in with the questionable uses where it's like, because I don't think supply store, for example, is a listed use, but it could be considered one of the various categories of retail. It could be considered something else. And so there, in the memo, I talk about how the ordinance provides the opportunity for either the plan commission or the administrator to make a classification determination and say, yeah, I think this use is similar to this other use, so this is allowed. But there's no guidance in the ordinance to help with making that decision. None of the uses have any definitions or criteria that can tell us like, this is how you identify this use. And so it becomes difficult to apply that consistently, particularly if if the administrator were to change, if members of the plan commission were to change, you'd have different people with different opinions on what counts, what doesn't count, and you get this inconsistent application of that sort of decision making.
And we've had that.
And so that's something else that I think needs to be improved in the ordinance is in the definitions, most likely there needs to be some kind of list of at least the one, maybe not every use doesn't need definition. I think we all know what a single family dwelling is, but some of the ones that are maybe a little bit more questionable could use some guidance, some clarity. And then lastly, use is not allowed in specific districts. This one is about mostly the home occupation standards and the way those are written. At least the way I'm understanding it is that home occupations are restricted to the uses that are listed as either permitted or special uses in that residential district, which is the problem we ran into with Macker Trucking. And their situation is that wasn't a use listed in agricultural, so are they allowed to use that as a home occupation? I've been approached by by people wanting to start a business out of their garage, or they're an accountant and they want to be able to say that their home is their business address. They're not necessarily inviting clients there, or but that's where they want to be able to say it's their business, and so they want to make sure that they're that's allowed. And currently our ordinance wouldn't let them without getting a variance. And so that's something else that I think needs to be clarified is, are there business uses that we do think are appropriate for some of the residential districts, and what are they, so that we can include those in there?
How are you wanting to go about trying to make a list of all these changes?
So I think what we need to do is, and this can be something that we also do as a public hearing, but I think among the 7 of you, whether it happens at one of these monthly meetings or we need to have a separate special meeting or something, where we can discuss and talk about, what things do you want to see added. I could also draft some things. You could give me a place to start and I could draft some things and then come in and you can review and be like, yeah, this is what we want. No, this is not quite what we want. But I think one of those two processes, either we're kind of generating it all sort of together in a meeting scenario, or you give me a place to start, a direction to go in. I can draft some stuff and we can I'll bring it back and you guys can review it and let me know if I'm on target or not.
My question, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, is if anybody had any comments on what they would like to see or how they would like to see this done, so he can start beginning that or planning for it.
I think you have to think also of what he listed. I mean, an accountant.
Well, there's gonna be a ton of stuff. That's what this is going to be.
Yeah, there is. That's why.
Do we want to have, that's what the discussion needs to have.
I
Do we
think,
want
yeah.
a separate meeting? Do we want him to kind of make a list to start with, or what's everybody's
Because
thoughts
there's a
here?
lot on here that is.
Sorry, let me
No,
just
you're
ask,
good.
is there a particular reason other than the application that you potentially will have in front of you this month for the duplex, which I have a separate question about? Is there anything about this particular thing that would make it something that needs to be done, I would say in the next 30 to 60 days?
No,
Then I
wouldn't think so. Sorry.
It's not that urgent.
okay, so I'm just gonna advise the council that that we have posted a position for a planner. And we may be close to a place where we might consider making an offer. So this may be something that if it is not critical in the next month or two, you want to hold off until potentially someone may be brought on staff.
I also have a question regarding standards. We can make them more strict than the county, correct? Am I saying that right?
You can make them.
We can make them more
strict
strict.
than the state. The county's standards don't have anything to do with lapels.
Okay, so my question is then, whenever you mention the home occupation, did that come from the state that you pulled that information from?
No, that's in our ordinance.
Okay, because I tried to find it and I couldn't, because in your memo, specifically you mentioned haircut styling, just for an example. But the state code for the beauty culture industry requires a separate entrance. So then that would put that specific type of business into a special use permit.
Well,
Right.
So just some things to think about in the
so I
future.
know this long time ago that, since you brought that one up that topic up specifically, it ended up happening, so it didn't matter. So we never actually took a vote on anything. But we had someone come to us wanting to do home beauty in their house. At that time, planning board was a little less structured. It was early when I joined on. And the thought process was on that specific one, but she didn't go through with it, was the secondary entrance would be her door to her garage, because she was gonna do it in the garage, right?
Mhm.
Have her little single room beauty place. So the man door going into the garage would be her business door. And that long as the vehicle stayed in the board at the time thought, long as the vehicle stayed in the driveway, so nothing, no parking on the street, anything else, and there was no signage, that would be allowed without a special use, because what's the difference between someone going over there and getting their hair cut and someone coming over to visit? I'm not saying right or wrong or what opinions on that, because it didn't end up going through anyways. She asked about it, we talked about it, and then it never went farther. But I just know that has been a thought in the past, and that's something to think about.
Exactly. And then with that being said, in our ordinance or our UDO, it says that whenever we pass something, it can't be considered, or it has to coincide with Madison County Health Department. That would not pass a health department inspection.
We were a little less structured back then.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying, and the only reason I know this is because I mean, I've gone through this personally with some family that has looked into and actually has a salon out of their home. And they had to have that very specific divider. I mean, there's this IC code written for beauty culture in the state of Indiana. So just keeping that in mind. And then I pulled up the home occupation standards within the county versus type 1 and type 2. And you're not allowed to have a business in a garage for type 1, but you can with a special permit, which is considered type 2. So I kind of dove into this to make sure I had the best information possible for myself, but also just to make sure we ask the right questions. And I mean, I think you're spot on as far as how are we going to provide the specific definitions of each class and special use. I noticed you mentioned in the memo that you mentioned IC code 36-7-4-918.4. In our version, we're only missing 2 caveats of what the states, and that is in need of for a variance arise from condition peculiar to property involvement. And then of course, approval doesn't interfere substantially with comp plan.
Yes.
So when you mentioned that is something that you want to add in as well to make sure we're aligning with the state.
Yeah, because right now the ordinance says that you can't get a use variance in
Right.
Lapel. And the state says BZA shall
Right.
issue use variances, so we have to. And so that section of the ordinance just needs to
Add those 2 caveats.
it needs to say, it needs to spell out the process the same way that the section for variances of development standards sort of spells out that
That was
process.
also brought up with the Maggart trekking thing, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Thought so. Thought that.
I have a question about the duplex thing.
Yes.
So I was looking at that and based on, and I apologize, it's been a really busy week, so I didn't dive into the UDO to see what it literally says, but based on the information you gave, R3 multifamily is more than 2 units.
Right.
So of course that excludes duplexes, but R1 doesn't include them either, which single family is single family. So they're kind of in a gray area.
Right,
So I looked to see like what is the general classification for a duplex, and it's multifamily.
Mhm.
So in that instance, ultimately the decision you're asking us to make is, do we want to change I guess what I'm saying is, doesn't it make sense for that to be
Well, the
multifamily?
reason I think it wasn't originally is because of people doing mother-in-law's quarters or mother-in-law's suite, where they have their own
Yeah.
address and they live on the property.
Yeah.
I think that's why they classified, I don't know this, but from my understanding, that's why that was classified as 3 or more. And we left the 2 was left separate way back in the day.
I think generally, from a code writing perspective, some communities want distinctions between the different amounts of units allowed, right? So, because multifamily is broad, that's two however many units. And so oftentimes communities will separate out duplex, and then they'll separate out, or they might do 2 to 4, or they'll separate out duplex and then do 3 to 4 or 3 to 5, and then do 5 to 8 and then 8 plus. If they're like if they're a bigger town or city. And so I'm not sure. I have been led to believe that this ordinance was modeled off of Madison County's ordinance at the time. And maybe that's why that exclusion was there. I don't know if it was directed by Lapel's council at the time or what, but that's kind of the history of that. And basically what I'm saying is, do we still want to exclude duplexes? Or do we think those should be allowed? And if so, in what districts?
If I understand this right, let's just say we update it to say that it has to be multifamily to be a duplex, then we'd be rezoning that particular property?
Well, that would be the solution to the applicant's problem is.
And if we did that, and that duplex were eventually torn down, they could just build 5 apartment.
Correct, without classifying. That goes into the same thing with why we wanted to do more classifications in like supply houses and stuff, right? Because if someone wants a supply house, it's gotta be general industrial. Well, now that supply house goes out of business, there's a whole list of things that can go in there. And so that's why we need a lot more of this.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was kind of thinking about, like, just does it make sense to necessarily rezone a property for just a.
Right, but what you could do, for example, is rather than, I know right now, R1 and R2 are written as single-family districts, and that's even like what their kind of name is. But, well, one is actually suburban and one is traditional. So for example, in the traditional neighborhood, you might think that a duplex might be appropriate here, and you might add that there, and that way you don't have to go into multifamily to get a duplex. And that sort of avoids that problem that you mentioned.
And then for the truck freight depot, and I won't extend the meeting, and I just want to make sure I understand. Aren't there some uses that it only makes sense for them to be special uses because they could have such an impact
Yes.
on the infrastructure, like say a truck freight?
Yes, and in my memo, I didn't distinguish whether any of those uses I gave as examples should be permitted or special. That is entirely up to you guys and the town council eventually when it comes to them to update the ordinance. And but yes, so
LKQ is
that's
a
a
good
good
example of that.
yeah. So that's a
Yes.
important
We just
distinction.
want like necessarily to say, oh, we're gonna allow any of, this particular thing, and then the next thing you know, it's the extreme of that.
Right.
LKQ.
But you go to that contractor office, and we already approved Dorsey for what he wanted to do long ago with outside storage, with piping, with stuff later in the future.
But that's a
Right.
lot in industrial.
Right, but, I mean, we're mixed here, we're there.
And I think he's just saying that they don't wanna pay the application fee
No, I wouldn't want to if I knew I might not get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big risk from a business perspective, and especially if you're somebody who's wanting to start a business, every little bit of extra expense makes that harder to do. And if we can make it easier for people to do that stuff and, grow Lapel's business base, I mean, I think that's a good goal to work towards.
Mhm.
Is that everything?
That's everything for the allowed uses. For the legislative changes, what did I just do? I don't know. So it's actually should be March 6th, but last week the governor signed House Enrolled Act number 1001, which created all of these new standards and requirements with regards to, or with a focus on increasing housing production in the state of Indiana. As I went through and just kind of tried to find things that I thought might impact our zoning ordinances, how any of the planning and zoning bodies and staff, how we do our jobs. And so this is kind of a rundown of those new changes. There are two sections, 7 and 12, that contain new requirements around language used in the flood hazard regulations. And it's not clear to me yet if we need to make changes and exactly what those changes will need to be. I'm expecting that in the same way we had DNR reach out about the ordinances before, and we just went through the process of updating them, that when these sections actually become effective, they'll reach out in a similar way and let us know, hey, change this and use this language, since they provide us with model ordinance language. Then there's two sections, 8 and 9, that change the building code, but that shouldn't impact us. That shouldn't require any action on our part because Lapel just adopted the state's building code by reference. So anything that changes in the state's building code changes in Lapel's building code automatically. Then section 13 is just a new definition for accessory dwelling units. To Alicia's point earlier, if Lapel were to adopt a definition for accessory dwelling unit, our definition would have to either meet the state's definition or be more strict. But Lapel doesn't currently have anything in the ordinance about ADUs, so that doesn't affect us right now. Section 25 is the section that I mentioned earlier that requires a public hearing to discuss barriers to housing production. They identify these 9 factors that we must consider in this public hearing. That those factors are allowing 2 to 4 unit structures in single family districts, allowing the construction of ADUs, manufactured homes, and modular homes, adaptive reuse of non-residential buildings for residential uses. So that'd be like converting offices to apartment buildings, for example. Increasing the allowable floor area ratio in multifamily housing districts, waiving or eliminating regulations that add cost and reduce a developer's ability to deliver lots of low-cost housing. So the architectural standards would be an example of that. Review impact fees and impact fee zones. Streamlining or shortening permitting processes and timelines, including through one-stop and parallel process permitting by at least 15 days. Using property tax abatements to enable higher density and mixed income communities. Donating vacant public land for affordable housing development. That section of this bill only requires that we hold a hearing to discuss each of these issues. It does not require us to necessarily adopt changes on any or all, on all or any of these ones. And hopefully looking at that list, you can see that there's some that don't really apply or make sense for Lapel.
How long do we have to do the hearing?
So the section, like most of everything in that bill, becomes effective July 1st of this year. And then we have to have had the hearing by January 1st, 2027.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So there's plenty of time to plan for the hearing and then plenty of time to have it. After the hearing, after the hearing, we will have to, or by January 1st, 2027, we'll have to submit a report. Actually, there's several reports that Lapel will have to submit, but in regards to this section, this report must be submitted that where we give to the Legislative Services Agency any housing study undertaken. So if Lapel decides to commission a housing study, we would have to give them that report, the minutes from the public hearing, and then any amendments to our UDO that resulted from that discussion, with a narrative explaining what changed. And like I said, there's nothing in here that says that we have to adopt any of these changes, but we do have to discuss them. And, I'm going to embark on the process of kind of writing a sort of big staff report that's going to address each of those factors. And looking at our ordinance and seeing, how we're sort of measuring up there, to sort of guide that discussion when it comes time. And then the last sort of, oh no, there's two more. Okay. The next big set of changes are to permit fees and permit processes. This bill sets a timeline that we have to follow pretty strictly for permitting, where an applicant submits a permit or submits an application. Staff has 30 days to let them know if the application is incomplete in any way. Then they have 30 days to complete the application. Upon the date that the application is considered complete, then staff or whatever other planning body is responsible for making that determination, then has 90 days to come to a decision about that application. I don't anticipate that affecting us very much. I try to turn applications around as fast as I can. Our schedule of like filing deadlines is about as tight as it can be, with respect to making sure that we're meeting the notice requirements. So You know, and 90 days is plenty of time for most of these decisions. The only ones where that might be a problem is like a rezoning or something where it has to go to plan commission and then town council. But even that, 90 days is enough time for, you know, one of those bodies to meet twice if need be to consider the application. So that's not too worrisome. There are sections that limit how often towns can increase their application fees and set limits on how much those increases, how big those increases can be. And then there is a section that basically requires us to, Lapel's ordinance already says that, you know, if you submit an application and then the ordinance changes, your application is still being processed under those old standards, because that's what you applied under. But this requires us to do that for up to 3 years from the point of that application being submitted. And that long window is because it also requires us to continue to apply those old standards when they apply for subsequent related permits. So like you apply for your primary plat, and then you also get to use those old standards for your final plat. But it becomes unclear then if a building permit and an improvement location permit are also then still subject to those old requirements because they're still connected to the plat, for example. So that's an area that I'm not really sure about. And I guess we'll just have to see what further guidance comes through. I mentioned the changes to the timeline. And then the last set of changes are to impact fees and impact fee zones. This bill requires that impact fees be aggregated into a single fee rather than assessed separately. And it also changes the requirements around how you determine the zone in which those fees are assessed. And then as a result of those changes, it requires that the town for most towns that already have impact fees and fee zones are probably going to have to pass a new ordinance reauthorizing those zones. And it sets requirements that you must have before you then create this new ordinance, having a comprehensive plan, which Lapel does, and then establishing an impact fee advisory committee. And they go into details about who's eligible for that. And so again, the sort of action steps that I'm taking, that staff is taking, is doing that review of the UDO to prepare for that required public hearing. And then I'll be coordinating with legal to figure out what other requirements maybe we might have and how to satisfy those.
Is that everything?
That's all for the planning report.
I have the questions on that last thing.
Go ahead.
So on the impact fees, it stated that we have to get these fees established and anything can't be collected after June 30th of this year.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point do we, as a board, need to get that information over to the town council to ensure that the correct steps are taken for these fees? And what actions does the town need to take to follow this new House bill?
So yeah, I think as far as I went over this stuff with Jenny already, and I think she's
working on combining
She's-
it into a single fee.
And yeah, and so I think she's already aware of that and will be sort of helping town council navigate that process. I don't know if impact fee ordinances come through the plan commission at any point,
Right,
but
I've overdone with them.
yeah. I just wouldn't notice that when I was reading through the House bill and wondered like if there's anything that we as a planning commission have to do to ensure that things are moved in the right direction to help the town council
yeah, I
progress, or if that's just something they do and.
I think it's something that they
Okay.
that they do. And as far as that prohibition on collecting goes, I don't know. That would certainly town council should, like, if they're interested in continuing to have impact fee, they should get that handled as quickly as possible. But I don't know that there's any. That will only become a problem if we have a development that comes in right around that time that we
Right.
would then need to collect a fee from. So.
And it's my understanding that House Bill 1001 also removes architectural standards. Did I understand that correctly?
It doesn't remove them outright. It says that we have to have a public hearing to talk about doing so.
And then townhomes and such can be built without public hearing, if so desired.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Any questions? Anybody else?
Questions?
Yeah.
I'm more interested in a couple of things timeline wise. So one of the other things going back to fees was, I know if I'm not mistaken, you presented the recommendation for the application fees and that took some time for the council to get that reviewed. And there's specific requirements in this legislation that say that those fees have to essentially only cover the cost of
Yes.
processing the application. Have you looked at that at all to see if our fees are too high, too low?
So I would say that in general, Lapel's fees are lower than they could be.
Okay,
That might change if the town were to hire staff. But, I know that my rate is not that cheap, and some of these applications take me like 20 hours to do all the research, prepare the staff report, and do all of that. So the fees are definitely inadequate for covering some applications. Other applications are super simple and take me an hour.
so having said that, something, and I don't know I don't know if I can even recommend this, but having said that, and knowing how long it takes to get these things passed, that might be something that when you come to the council meeting, you come with some information, because once this legislation goes into effect, I believe you can only change the fees every 5 years.
Right.
So if they're too low, we're stuck with them. And even then, you can only change them by a minimal amount.
Well, the ordinance does say, or the bill does say that you can, I don't know if this might not affect the timing of the increases, but it does say that you can increase, if the cost to the town increases, you can increase your fee.
So a lot of our permit fees and stuff, how long ago was that, Andrea? You were part of that, weren't you? When we redid that a couple of years ago, they were so low that literally, depending on what it was, the town was paying for the inspector to go out because the fees did not cover it. We went through and we made the decision at that time that we couldn't make this huge jump on everybody. So we looked to Frankton, Fortville, Pendleton, I believe, I know Pendleton for sure, and where we were at, and we mainly compared more with Pendleton, and we tried to pick somewhere between where we were at then and where Pendleton was at and do like a happy medium in between. With the plan, and I know we have it, that in a few years, we'd relook at it again, yes.
I just think the timing's limited if come July 1st, whatever we've got, we're stuck here. And then I think even if you do make an increase, you still have to wait 180 days to implement that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So you could be sitting on, depending on what's coming in, which hopefully would be a lot by then, you could be painfully underprepared for
Yes.
if we don't move quickly now. Sorry. And one other thing, I know I had mentioned earlier about some of these things that we could hold off until potentially, or at least for maybe a month or two to see if there's a staff person coming on, like the UDO review for the meeting. But the one that I did find concerning, and I think the statement you made in your staff report was for PUDs specifically that want to come in, if they meet the requirements, they have to be allowed. So the requirements better be what you want, right? So
Yes.
that was the first thing, which I think that's isn't that always been the rule?
Yeah.
When I read this, when I read the actual law, and granted I was cross-eyed by the time I got to that part, it sounded like they were saying they could force you in some cases to rezone. So if the PUD met all the other requirements, but it wasn't in, say, an R1 area, they could force you to accept it anyway, wherever.
Well, to clarify that point, technically by allowing a PUD, you are rezoning. So like a PUD is a unique zoning district that is being created by the PUD ordinance.
Okay.
So I would, the way I understand that means that even before this legislation, if somebody had decided that, they saw this, well, actually, I mean, I think even other towns I've worked for, if this parcel is currently zoned agricultural, but I want to build a housing development on it, I'm going to get a PUD. That PUD ordinance, I might do a base zoning that's not agricultural. And if they approve the PUD, then it rezones that property from agricultural to this new PUD. So I don't think that provision changes that.
The only part that I understood that it might change is this is my understanding from when we've done PUDs in the past. So we start a PUD. The nice part about a PUD for everybody is we can do kind of whatever we want. It's good for the client, it's good for us because we can ask and demand things, they can ask and demand things, and we don't have to necessarily follow our zoning requirements for that. Like if they're doing an R2 style neighborhood, we don't have to follow R2. I think where it gets more detail with that, in my understanding, is if they come in and say, hey, we're doing a PUD, we agree to a PUD, and they say, over here in this corner, we're gonna do, based on your R2 requirements, we have to approve that now. We can't say, well, we would rather see this or that.
I think the way to think about this is, let's say you have a situation where a developer comes in and they want to develop a PUD. They talk with staff gives them comments and says change this in your ordinance, change this in your ordinance. They take those comments, they handle them. They come to Plan Commission with the ordinance that staff has said that staff is okay with. And the staff report says staff recommends a favorable recommendation for this PUD. Maybe Plan Commission doesn't agree with all and wants more changes. They agree to those changes and they make those changes. They come back to Plan Commission to get that favorable recommendation again. And they've done everything that we've all required them to do. But Plan Commission just really doesn't like the project. And so even though they've said everything that they've done everything that Plan Commission has asked them to do thus far, Plan Commission still says, you know, no, we still don't really think this is a good idea. Unfavorable recommendation. And maybe that's because Plan Commission, you know, maybe you don't think it's the right location. Maybe the size is too big, like you wish it was a smaller development. But for whatever reason, you give that unfavorable recommendation. And then I think the way that this is being written is saying that a situation like that would give that developer grounds to be like, hey, this is illegal, you can't do that.
So we did that with Arbor,
Yeah.
when they were coming in right there, and we basically just said, I mean, you met everything. There were some variants we gave them for like the siding and that kind of stuff, but we thought there were too many homes. We thought that, there was all kinds of stuff, and we just said no, and then town council voted no.
Well, that was the difference. You talking about the school?
Yeah.
But that wasn't a PUD. That was a R2. R2.
It was a PUD with R2 as their base zoning.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
Looking at that one, for example, if I'm not mistaken, our comp plan says that that's gonna be commercial. So, and currently it's ag. And that's perfect example. They come in, but let's say they didn't ask for any variances, because if I understand right, variances, you have to approve variances. Say they come in and they meet your minimum lot size, your architectural standards, the whole nine yards. And we say, well, our comp plan says that's gonna be commercial, we don't want that there. Are we forced to then put it there?
I don't think so. And the reason why I would say that is because the state's requirements for rezoning require you to consider the comp plan. And so that's part of the legal requirements of the situation.
Can you look at that and double check on that? Because that will become an issue come July. I guarantee you, they will be back.
I know, I think,
And then that's where the 3-year caveat takes place,
Yes.
and they're like, okay, we've got this, and we now.
Well, they
need
have
your
another lot
comp
right
plan.
behind the school that they could
Yeah.
look
Oh,
at.
I mean, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Well, I'd be counting on that.
Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
Which is a whole nother animal.
Uh,
Well, and then last question, let's say it's already R2 and they meet all the standards, but we don't have sewer capacity. Can they force us to upgrade sewer to accept it?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
I've always understood that once we approve it and it goes to engineering for sewer, water, stuff like that, if we can't handle it, then we have grounds to deny it unless they agree to pay to upgrade it themselves.
Because they can't force us to take on debt,
Yes,
correct?
correct. That was my
Here's
understanding.
what I'm asking, because the way this thing is written, it
That's my
is
understanding.
basically written saying, we want you to give up all your standards, and we don't care if they're container homes, tiny homes, if they're matchboxes that.
Yeah,
Right.
so, and
Yeah.
this is, and this is my career, this is what I do, we work with builders. This was lobbied by builders.
Yes.
Arbor, TK, Lennar, especially in Carmel, Westfield, Zionsville, in the area of Brownsburg, these places are experiencing huge growth because they don't have enough inspectors to inspect in a timely manner that these home builders want to push this stuff through. So, we literally just had a client 2 weeks ago. We dug a foundation. You have to wait for them to come out and inspect the foundation before you can pour the foundation. Well, they were scheduled to pour the foundation and the inspector never came. So they had to push back this. So that's where this is coming from. It's basically to make it as easy as possible for a home builder to come in and build without a lot of this stuff getting away, which to an extent I get, I get some of it, but yeah, I kind of, yeah. It's literally just so that I'm not singling out a single home builder to come in here and say, no, we're gonna build homes here and there's nothing you can do because the state says now, that they want to build.
I mean, they want you to give up minimum square footage and minimum lot size requirements, and I'm looking at that going, you start building on trailers now? Like, I mean, honestly,
And they mentioned that, they
Yeah.
mentioned
You got
manufactured
trailers in
homes.
town.
no, not trailers, like
And trailers.
those
Oh, you mean
tiny
like
homes you hook
containers?
up to the back of your car and pull it around.
Well, some of that could also be if we, I mean, as a town could come up with a standard to say, hey, listen, if we're gonna, if they're saying, oh, no, you've got to build these modular homes and trailer parks because you need to accommodate this bracket, this tax bracket, we could come up with something that says, hey, listen, we're okay with building an apartment complex in this area to help bring down our overall home value. I mean, now, there's ways around that because Carmel and Fishers will do it. They'll figure out a way around not having to build modular home parks or something like that. I mean, but.
Yeah,
you know,
and like I said, the bill doesn't, to my understanding, it doesn't have any language in that section that requires us to make any of those changes. So, you know, again, we have the discussion, we decide, no, we really don't think that, really don't think that the minimum lot size or the minimum dwelling area in Lapel needs to be lower. That's fine. If that's the decision we arrive at, that should be fine.
We just have to consider
We just
it.
have to consider it.
Mhm. And let's say we opt out, does that have any effect to us as to what we could be eligible for grants and such in the future as far as development goes?
By opt out, you mean like decide that we don't need to make any changes?
Yeah,
There's nothing in the bill that says anything about that. That might be something that's connected to legislation that already exists. And, you know, I only did a review of this bill.
mhm.
So I don't know, that might be
Something to look into, maybe.
something to look into. And it might be something that the legislature might adopt at a later time, modifications to their grant programs or whatever. But this bill doesn't have anything about that.
And then I noticed you mentioned the DNR language, and I'm sure it doesn't cover, I know we just, as a town, passed new DNR language. Is this going to be in addition to?
Yeah, so I think it's really, if I'm recalling correctly, it's a very small change. It's like, it's something about like, like if you get special permission to develop in a floodplain, there's something called like compensatory fill or something like that. And I guess some towns require like a ratio of like 7-1 or something, and they're saying, no, you can't go above like 3 to 3.5 or whatever it is to 1. I don't know what the ordinance that we just passed says. Like I said, that was mostly DNR's model language. So I can definitely take a look at that and see if that's something that we need to look at. But the flood hazard ordinance changes are really quite small.
Okay.
And might not affect us.
Okay.
So it sounds like if I'm not mistaken, just based on the timeline, the most critical pieces will be the fees, which will be the town council, and the review to make sure we have everything we need in the ordinance so that there's anything crazy coming in. Because if I'm not mistaken, if they like what they see, where they don't have to negotiate, they can just say, we're just gonna do this and move on. And like, I don't know what it says about lighting, but that last one, when they came in, they were only gonna put 2 streetlights in that whole, like, 20 acres. And I admit, I had not been over to Tuscany. I don't even have a reason to go that way. And I just drove through there the other day because I thought, well, I'm gonna be part of the planning. I probably need to drive around and see what's out here. It's dark in there. there's no lighting. And I think that from a public safety standpoint, that's dangerous.
Mhm.
I wouldn't live in a subdivision.
That's definitely, there's, I think that is one of those standards, when it comes to new developments that, there's a lot of tension around it because, like you said, it's a public safety thing, but you also have, depending on the way that the development is built out, right? Houses that might be really close to these streetlights and they're like, these lights shine in our windows. We don't like the streetlights.
Fair.
So it turns into this, like, how do we balance out these two ends of it? But I think that's a good point. I think I think Lapel's UDO, the requirements for a PUD district around lighting say something along the lines of, it's a little vague and wishy-washy. It says there must be enough lighting to safely like travel through the.
Yeah, but I don't think Tuscany was a PUD, were they? Because that's where Matt, we said we messed up, that we could have had more.
I don't remember.
I don't think they are, if I remember.
They might not be.
I don't think.
I mean,
they
because
are.
like Montgomery Farms and
I think that might just be R2.
what's the other one that's down
Yeah.
there?
I don't think. we
Those
have
two
a
are not
lot of
PUDs
control over
either,
that.
so.
No. And you would be surprised, electrician side of things, how little light you really need. Because when it's measured in foot candles, some of that lighting is not that much for requirements. Most people want to go above and beyond, but requirements is literally enough to be able to see to walk. It's not to be able to see what you think is comfortably, yes.
Yeah.
No LED lights.
Actually, LED's better because you can adjust where the light goes. You don't shine people's houses.
There's that one purple light in town.
If that is all, the next thing on the agenda is code enforcement case updates. Assuming there's none.
No.
Sounds great. This time I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting, with the next meeting being March 12th.
I'll make a motion.
Today.
Oh.
Yeah, that's today.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
They always do this and then I read it. I'll let you know.
April 9th.
April 9th, thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? That's your.
All in favor?
Aye.
Brandon made the motion. Who seconded?